Tonight on the show, Pakistan admits heavy losses after Operation Sindoor. Pakistani Army spokesperson Lieutenant General Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry confirmed that at least 11 soldiers killed and 78 injured in India's retaliatory strikes. Good evening, you're watching TKC World, where we make sense of the global events with straight facts and sharp analysis. Also coming up on the show, President Trump is visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar and UAE. Why is this visit important? And what's on the agenda? Meanwhile, UK's Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has unveiled a new immigration policy. We will understand how this will impact Indians. And finally, US and China brings tariffs down on each other and eye a full-fledged trade deal. We will decode how this may be a bad news for the Indian economy. All this is lined up. Let's get started. For the last few days, there was a fog of war. Claims and counterclaims were there everywhere. But now, in a rare moment of admission, Pakistan has publicly acknowledged the damage inflicted by India's Operation Sindoor. In a late-night press conference by Pakistani Army spokesperson Lieutenant General Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry confirmed that at least 11 soldiers were killed and 78 were injured in India's retaliatory strikes on Pakistan. He also admitted that one Pakistani fighter aircraft was also damaged, though he downplayed the extent and did not share which aircraft or how it happened. This is the first official admission from Islamabad that the cost of this conflict was steep. And while Pakistan tried to keep the tone calm, the numbers speak volumes. Operation Sindoor was launched by India on May 7 in response to a terror attack in Pahalgam, Kashmir, and Pakistan's cross-border firing on Indian civilians and military targets. Now, under Operation Sindoor, India conducted airstrikes on 9 terrorist launch pads deep inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and also targeted 8 Pakistani air bases, radar systems, and air defense installations during the course of further escalation that we saw for some 3 odd days. According to Indian officials, the operation killed over 100 terrorists, including high-value operatives like Yusuf Azhar and Mudassir Ahmed, both involved in IC-814 hijacking. India claims that 35 to 40 Pakistani soldiers were also killed. Pakistan responded with their own operation, naming the conflict period as Battle of Truth. This is what they named it. But it was also very clear that while both nations were flexing their muscle, India had managed to hit harder. A few days after the operation, Prime Minister Narendra Modi delivered a powerful 22-minute address to the nation. Speaking with clarity, conviction and confidence, he said, and I quote, "Operation Sindoor is India's new policy against terrorism. This is the new normal." He warned Pakistan against using its nuclear arsenal as a threat, saying the bluff of nuclear blackmail has been busted. His message was bold and clear, and I quote, "Terror and trade, terror and talks can no longer go together." In a sharp rebuke to Pakistan's leadership, Modi addressed, and I quote again, "The terrorists they have nurtured will end up swallowing them. If Pakistan wants to survive, it must root out terrorism." Today, PM Modi also visited Adampur Air Base, which Pakistan has falsely claimed to have destroyed. Standing on that very base, he praised the Indian Air Force and said their response had been restoring the national pride and deterred future aggression. But the world is also asking, who won this battle? Both India and Pakistan are telling their citizens that they quote-unquote won this round. Pakistan declared a symbolic victory with grand speeches and military briefings. India responded with precision airstrikes and confident prime ministerial address. But here is the reality. In war, no one truly wins. Civilian areas in Jammu's Poonch district were shelled, religious sites were damaged, and people on both sides of the border lived in fear. However, if we are speaking in military terms on the military front and strategic outcomes, the world agrees that India had the upper hand. It stuck deeper, hit harder, and made its point without crossing civilian red lines. Dear viewers, Operation Sindoor wasn't just about missiles and targets. It was about sending a message, a new message that India will not be provoked quietly anymore. But here is the real challenge. Can both nations now move from confrontation to conversation? While both countries have called this a win for themselves, real peace will always be the ultimate victory. US President Donald Trump has chosen the Gulf for his first major visit after taking office this January. The three-day tour beginning Tuesday will take him to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, with a packed agenda centered on economic partnerships, regional diplomacy, and security cooperation. This is a huge visit for US President Trump. The visit kicks off in Riyadh, where Trump will attend a Gulf summit and meet Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, also called MBS. It's a symbolic return. Saudi Arabia was also Trump's first international stop during his first term, and it signals continuity in Trump's Middle East strategy. So let's start with knowing what's on the agenda. Trump arrives with business on his mind, with the US economy having recently posted its first quarterly decline in 3 years. He is seeking to secure massive investments from Gulf countries, from Gulf partners. In Saudi Arabia, Donald Trump will attend a Saudi-US investment forum for pushing for a $1 trillion investment in the US industries, building on a $600 billion pledge by MBS earlier this year. Saudi Arabia is also expected to announce $100 billion in arms purchases, covering everything from missiles to radar systems for their country. His visit to the UAE will be equally business focused, aiming to tap into Abu Dhabi's $1.4 trillion investment plan in US sectors like AI, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and energy. Trump is also expected to lift Biden-era restrictions on exporting advanced technology, including US microchips, to the UAE. Then in Qatar, home to the largest US military base in the region, Trump's conversation will focus on military cooperation and regional security. Qatar may also ask for Trump's backing in easing sanctions on Syria and push for renewed Gaza ceasefire efforts. Notably, Israel is missing from this itinerary. Tensions in Gaza have escalated following Israel's recent offensive and the breakdown of a ceasefire. A US officially put it bluntly, and I quote, "Nothing good can come out of a visit to Israel at the moment." Reports also suggest a growing rift between President Trump and Netanyahu, particularly over Trump's proposal to redevelop Gaza and relocate its residents, a plan widely rejected by Arab states. Hence, the bigger picture here is that while Trump says the visit is about quote-unquote opportunity and peace, the subtext is quite clear. This is about reshaping the US footprint in the Middle East on America's term. Trump's Gulf visit is an attempt to reassert US leadership, revive regional diplomacy, and attract massive investments, all while balancing the increasingly fragile situation in Gaza and cooling ties with Israel. On May 12th, UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer unveiled a sweeping immigration overhaul aimed at cutting net migration quote-unquote significantly over the course of next 4 years. His goal: to prevent Britain from becoming what he calls, and I quote, "an island of strangers." But behind this rhetoric lies a harsh reality. These new rules will hit Indian students and professionals the hardest. Let's start with understanding what's changing in UK's immigration policy. The UK's new immigration white paper lays out several strict reforms. First, skilled work visas will now be limited mainly to degree holders. So if you don't have a graduate level qualification, your job options could be time bound, and only if there is a proven labor shortage in the country. Second, employers will face a 32% hike in immigration skills charges when they hire from overseas, and that money will be used to upskill local UK workers. Third, care homes can no longer recruit new staff from abroad unless they are already in the UK, a major blow to Indian healthcare workers. Fourth, English proficiency requirements will be raised, even for adult independents. If your spouse or parents want to join you, they must pass tougher language benchmarks and examinations. Fifth, student visas are becoming less attractive. There is now a 6% levy on income from foreign students. Plus, the post-study work period drops from 2 years to 18 months. Sixth, settlement timelines double. Instead of 5 years, foreign workers will now have to wait for 10 long years for permanent residency unless they are part of a high-skill, fast track in artificial intelligence, medicine, or engineering. Lastly, foreigners with criminal record, even for minor offences, can now be deported faster under new streamlined immigration rules. These changes could dramatically impact Indian migrants, who make up the largest group of overseas workers and the second largest groups of students in the United Kingdom. In 2023 alone, over 250,000 Indians moved to the UK, many on work or student visas. But in 2024, the number of work visas granted to Indians dropped by half. Out of 369,000 work visas, more than 81,000 went to Indians, 22% of the total. And when you add student and dependent visas, the number only grew. This reform will particularly affect middle-class Indian families who have long seen the UK as a launchpad for their global opportunities. The British government expects 1 lakh fewer migrants every year as a result of this new immigration policy. That means more rejections, fewer job opportunities, and long waits for residency. Let's also understand the politics behind this move. Starmer's move is political as much as it is economic. With pressure from the far-right Reform UK party and increasing anti-immigration sentiment among the voters in the country, this is a bid to what quote-unquote people say take back control, a slogan once owned by Brexit supporters. Ironically, while the UK insists migrants hurt economic growth, it's Indian professionals and students who have filled critical gaps in healthcare, in tech, and in education. Starmer argues that high migration did not lead to higher growth, but many experts disagree, saying that the UK's economic struggles are more about policy than people. The bottom line here is that in trying not to become an island of strangers, the UK may end up isolating the very people who have contributed to its economy, to its healthcare, and the innovation in the country. For Indian migrants, the message is clear: getting to the UK and staying there just got a lot harder. The doors aren't closed, but they are definitely being narrowed, and only those who fit into every specific boxes will now be allowed in. So if you are planning to study or work in the UK anytime soon, it is time to think carefully, prepare harder, and explore alternative destinations as well. When the world's two biggest economies, the United States and China, pause their tariff war, the entire world, entire global trade network feels the ripple effect. For India, it is like watching two heavyweight boxers call for a timeout and wondering whether it is time to step in or step back. Yesterday on May 12th, the US and China decided to suspend new tariff hikes for some 90 odd days. They have agreed to slash import duties tariffs by 115%, easing tensions that have long disrupted global supply chains, especially after Trump's Liberation Day. For India, this truce is a mix of both challenges and opportunity. Let's break it down. Let's start with understanding what both China and US have agreed to. The US will cut its steep 145% tariff on Chinese goods down to 30%, while China will reduce its own tariffs to 10%. This is a part of a 90-day cooling off period as both countries try to resolve long-standing trade disputes, especially after Liberation Day, as I mentioned. But the question is, why does this matter to India? Because during earlier US-China tensions, earlier days of tensions, Indian exporters stepped into the gap, supplied everything from electronics to chemicals to the global markets, to the world markets. Now that window may start to close. According to experts, this tariff pause presents a mixed bag. One of the biggest challenges is with the US-China trade expected to surge again in sectors like electronics, machinery, and chemicals. India will now face increased competition, especially in the regions like Southeast Asia and Latin America, where it recently gained ground. It is very important to note. But not all is lost. India still has an edge in sectors unaffected by US-China trade war, like pharmaceutical, like API, gems and jewelry, engineering goods, and IT-enabled services. These areas, these niches, could become India's safe haven. Another positive, this 90-day truce might push companies to hedge against future volatility by expanding manufacturing in stable countries like India. And thanks to PLI schemes and Making in India, sectors like electronics, sectors like textile and auto components may benefit from this whole situation. But the big question is, what should India do? How can India still capitalize on this whole thing? Think tank GTRI warns that India's previous tariff advantage is rapidly shrinking. Just months and weeks ago, Indian goods had a clear edge in the US as Chinese products faced up to 145% duties. And that gap is now narrowing, risking India's role as China's plus one alternative. Here is what experts are advising, suggesting India to do. Negotiate smart trade deals with the US to lock in India's 10% tariff access. Avoid sudden exposure to high tariffs like proposed 26% under Trump's new policies. Cut production costs, fix logistic bottlenecks, and simplify regulations to stay globally competitive. Be strategic in free trade agreements. Don't open up sensitive sectors like pharma and auto without real reciprocal benefits. Learn from President Trump. Dear viewers, also try to understand what's at stake. And I believe this data, these numbers might help you understand the importance, the graveness of this whole situation. The US is India's top trading partner, accounting for 18% of exports. Exports to the US in 2024-25 was 86.5 billion, and trade surplus with the US is 41.18 billion, 18 billion. Now compare that to China. Exports to China fell 14.5% to 14.25 billion. Imports from China soared opposite to 113.45 billion, and trade deficit with China is 99.2 billion. Clearly, India has healthier and more balanced relationship with the US. The bottom line here is that this US-China truce is temporary, but the lessons for India are permanent. We must act fast, stay competitive, and negotiate smartly to secure our place in global supply chains. Because in a world of shifting alliances, the only thing that survives is adaptability. And that's all I have for you on the show tonight, dear viewers. Now I will see you tomorrow. Until then, take care and good night.